Well,
Yes.
here we are again. Welcome to Salt Spring.
Yes.
Welcome to Sid's beloved island.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we just feel so full already, and we haven't even started, but just last night was such an incredible evening with you all, and I haven't met everybody that's new here, so I plan to, as the weekend progresses, to say hi to everybody. But just welcome, welcome, welcome to the island.
Yeah, and it's raining today, but we expect a little bit of sunshine while you're here. But anyway, it's mystical even when it's raining. It's quite beautiful. So during the breaks, enjoy the island. Go for some walks. Take it in. You probably have been doing that already, but really enjoy it. But let me start by just saying, we think of this as being the school that Sid asked us to start, but actually, you guys are the school. It's the people who somehow are attracted to coming to this quieter setting, to this, whatever you want to call it, event, where really what we're here to do is just to go to a beautiful state of mind together, to go to a feeling together. And so it's the people who, like the feeling last night, was absolutely amazing, And as I went around and listened to people talking, it's just amazing what people are talking about, There, in all the conversations that I was in last night or heard other people, there was a hallmark to them. There was something special to them. And what it was is people weren't really talking about which problem they want to cure or what they want to do about their thinking. They were talking about something deeper than that. They were talking about the feeling that was here. They were talking about how thrilled they were to arrive on this beautiful island. And see, that to me, that is the school. That's what comes in that door back there, is people looking for that particular feeling, for that experience of the true self. And so, because you all come in that way, we get a level of, whatever you want to call it, permission, or we just get to start in a beautiful place.
And it may be a different kind of learning. For those of you who are really new to this and have not been to the school before, it may be a different learning for you. Perhaps quieter, but rich, very rich. And that's the feeling that Chip is talking about. So the school doesn't offer how-tos, because you already know how to. It's just a matter of we do the best we can to offer what is. And what is God in motion. And I seldom talk about God because everybody has a different perspective on what that is. In terms of this understanding, it's the spiritual, formless energy behind life. You could call it the life force, you could call it whatever you want, whatever is comfortable for you. But I know that when Sid had his enlightenment experience, that's what he called it. And he talked about what he had realized about thought, that thought is the missing link, and that thought creates insecurity, that we can use thought to create insecurity. And that for him was like the start of his journey to this revelation of what mind is, what consciousness is. He realized who and what he really was on the inside. And when he realized that every human being on this planet is that same thing, that same spiritual energy in motion in the physical world. So thought, consciousness, and mind. And even though in the beginning he didn't really call them three principles, he talked about that right away. And he said to Ken and I, these principles have the power to change the fields of psychology and psychiatry. He knew that in the depth of that experience. That's what came to him. And I find that every day more remarkable. That it's like there are no words to describe the power of that blessing that happened to Sid, who was an ordinary working man, who wasn't searching for anything. He didn't know there was anything to find. And that too is what makes this an extraordinary journey, is that this happened spontaneously to an ordinary human being. Somebody who had very limited education, and this understanding just came out of him, out of the depth of his true nature. And so the ordinariness of what, of his being as a human being, and the extraordinariness of what he realized is an amazing combination. And that he shared it with the world and continued to share it until he was no longer part of this world. And so, as Chip says, now we all continue to come together, and more new people from all parts of the globe somehow are drawn to this beautiful island so that we can continue our practical and profound journey.
Yeah, some people over the years have said, well, why do you talk so much about Sid Banks? Why not just talk about the principles? And my answer to that is that without his experience, without what happened to him, without the evidence of how his change, the change of his whole being was so profound, the principles wouldn't have gone anywhere. Because it was the actual change in Sid Banks that got people's attention, Because you could hear the words in other teachings. You could hear some of them anyway, maybe not the principles. There were other people trying to help people raise their awareness. But there wasn't the phenomena of the change in that person, which in turn led to changes in other people. And through the years, it's begun to appear to me that the same process keeps happening over and over again. Like here on Salt Spring, this was, the mid to late 70s, there was a profound change in a few dozen people. So much so that it was shocking to the community. That it ended up being, for instance, a full-page write-up in the Vancouver paper from this little island and this simple working man. And you can see the chain of events that happens, that one person changes. And see, it's such a deep change, it's such a profound change that it's undeniable. It's something really different, something not seen before, okay? And then when that happens, somebody else looking at that, the smallest thing that starts, I think, is an elevation in their level of hope. I mean, to see change and to see its reality and to see its beauty is to elevate the level of hope. And once you elevate the level of hope, the direction of your thinking is changed forever. It changes the direction of your thinking. You begin to look in another direction altogether. And because you do that, something inside of you begins to listen at a deeper level. You see that all of the searching that we've done with our intellects through all the years hasn't really brought us what we want. But when you see real change and your level of hope goes up, something different happens. You start to listen with your heart. You start to let something slip by the radar. And more people change. And other people in their perimeter look at that and go, oh. And their level of hope is elevated. And then they change. And you know, I'm grateful for the internet. I'm grateful that it's getting out to the world. But that fundamental order of change has not, it's been the same since the beginning with this. So fast forward, and we've worked with business, we've worked with therapists, we've worked with people in prison, and we'll use the prison as an example. We go into a prison. My wife and I worked for a few years in the prison system with inmates. And we sit down and we tell our story, and no more than that. This is what happened to us. This is how our hearts changed. This is how our thinking changed. And somewhere in the telling of that story, the feeling in that room shifts. And one or two of those people that are living in sheer hell. There is no, I have never seen a place that fits the description of hell more than when we first started working in the prison system. But one of them is something hits her, and the first night she sits bolt upright in her bunk and has an insight into how she's created the life that she's had and who she really is in spite of that, and what she has to look forward to now that she sees that spiritual fact, the spiritual fact of who she really is. She's so touched that a week later we go in and she is unrecognizable physically. We go up to the door and it's like, who's the new person with the big smile? And it's not just a smile, it's a total change in her bearing. It's a total change in how she looks you in the eye. There's something brand new there. Now I can guarantee you 100% that that's something that was never seen inside of those walls before. So what happens? A whole bunch of people look at that, and another 2 or 3 of them get hope because they've seen the reality of true change. They've seen the reality of somebody having touched their spiritual essence and changed. They've seen the reality of somebody who has seen how life is created on a moment-to-moment basis and changed. So 3 or 4 more change, right? And in that 3 or 4 more is one that's been shall we say, a harsh, negative leader, okay, in that environment, in that culture. But that person changes. And the next thing you know, the ripple goes through the whole prison. It's the same story as Salt Spring. In all the businesses that you worked in and I worked in, it's the same story. One person shifts, one person changes, and the level of hope is elevated to a place where people actually go into a deeper dimension of thought. They see a new world. And the same story keeps repeating itself over and over again. But fundamentally, it's the story of Sid Banks' experience. You know, I spent years in my life searching for enlightenment, thinking I had to find enlightenment. I had to have this big, booming experience that would change everything. And then I meet this simple man who's had that experience, and I realize I don't need to worry about that anymore. I don't need to think about enlightenment anymore, because something happened with him that I, in spite of all the searching and the so-called spiritual leaders that I encountered in my life, I did not know that the knowledge from that enlightenment was transferable, totally transferable, that you didn't have to have that exact same experience. In fact, the whole thing was an illusion because you're there anyway, you know? And the idea that that wisdom is transferable through this understanding of these 3 beautiful principles it's a foundational shift in how human beings are going to look at each other going forward. It's a paradigm shift in who we think we are personally and how we see the people around us. So when we look at what's going on in the world today, I mean, the news has just been so bad in the last little while. I've watched very little of it, but 2 minutes is enough to tell you it's really bad. You know, this knowledge has come to the world just in time. You know, because when human beings, when their level of consciousness rises to the point where they begin to understand what other human beings are, this will start to change all of that. But it'll change from the grassroots. It's like with psychology, psychiatry. I'll just touch on it. The principles have changed those fields, are changing those fields, because of what the principles tell us about what a human being is. You know, like, we've been operating under some false assumptions about what a human being is, and those false assumptions run through those fields. Now, if we begin to consider the fact, the spiritual fact, that human beings are spiritual beings, that their true self is not of this world, in spite of the fact that we live in this world. Their true self is not of this world. And because it's not of this world, it cannot and will not ever be damaged. It cannot be damaged. And it resides within us no matter what we've been through, and no matter where we find ourselves. And that's why that's why we've walked into prisons and seen people living sheer hell in 1 or 2 days later, because that true self still exists within them, and something has brought them to a moment where they felt it, because you can't understand it with this. The true self cannot be understood with the intellect. It's not possible. But it can be felt. You can experience being in your true self, being that true self. And because it is undamaged, cannot be damaged, will never be damaged, you're actually, to steal Elsie's words, residing in wisdom. Yeah. And that's why people change. Because that dear man who introduced us to all of this said, never mind looking out there for answers. The answers reside within.